So welcome back folks to another one of my videos. I'm Brendan from Blue Light, and for those of you who haven't seen any of my videos before, over the past several years I've been coaching and supporting people for the police recruitment process. A good getting on for 3,500 people have now succeeded as a result of my support. So what's this video about tonight? Well, I've just completed this coaching session helping to prepare someone for their final interview with a police force. And it's a police force that uses a situational question as part of the interview process. And what we mean by a situational question is where they will give you a conundrum to deal with, some scenario that may actually happen or may have actually happened in the past, and they're going to ask you, how would you deal with that scenario? Now, these are generally tests of your integrity, and your ability to demonstrate that you have the code of ethics as part of your DNA, that you understand what's required of you as a police officer, and you understand what steps you would take to address comments or behaviour which fell below what the code of ethics requires. So on my client only group, I've placed quite an in-depth video which demonstrates how you would utilise the CUDSA framework, which is confront, understand, define and summarise, seek solutions, assess and monitor and result. Now CUDSA is a non-contact conflict management model which I've adapted in several ways actually for the police recruitment process. But I've adapted it from the world of real life policing, so it's not just something that Brendan's made up, it's something that's got legs and has been used for decades now within the police service. If you Google it though, it probably won't bring up much, but my clients know it inside and out, and they know how to apply it to a variety of situations. And we applied CUDSA to the conundrum, which the sort of conundrum that this candidate is going to be offered to describe how they'll deal with it at the interview. So we got chatting though about perhaps there's a stage needed before the confront, because if we look at the code of ethics, it talks about how you've got a positive obligation to question the conduct of colleagues that you believe falls under the expected standards, and if necessary challenge or report that behaviour. So there's some important words there. You've got a positive obligation. It's not whether you know that the standards have dropped or the standards, the behaviour or language has fallen below the standards expected. It's just believe. If you believe it, you've got a positive obligation to question it and then go on to report it to one of your supervisors or managers. So we started thinking about how there's degrees of acceptability and degrees of inappropriateness. And I think this is something that's a valid thing for you to consider in this kind of answer. Because if we look back in time a little bit, and I'll put a link just below to the sort of language which was not just acceptable back in the 70s, but was deemed funny. So there's a program I remember watching, I'm showing my age here, called Love They Neighbour that was on in the 1970s, and this was prime time viewing, and it was about a white family that lived next to a black family, and the sort of language that was used to describe the black family, and I quote here: jungle boy, tribe of nignogs, sambos, how white folk take precedence over black, and from the other side, from the black family to the white family, calling them honkies. And those are all quoted, by the way. And if you watch the link below, you'll be absolutely horrified at the levels of racism demonstrated in this program. And it was funny, and it was. I remember in the 1970s, that sort of language was perfectly acceptable. I can remember family members using the phrase to quote nignogs, sambos, and sometimes worse. But none of it was ever challenged, none of it was ever confronted. If you use that kind of language now as a police officer, you would be up for fast-track dismissal. You'd be out of the job so fast, your feet just wouldn't touch the ground. But back in the 70s, it was subject of primetime viewing comedy. So we've got these levels of inappropriateness that don't just have a level which is consistent and constant. It changes over the years. So what is acceptable today may not be acceptable in the future. And then we started talking about banter, because I can remember comments like that being excused as banter. I can remember far worse than that in the 1980s when I joined, in the 90s, as being excused as banter. Sort of comments now that just would not stand anyone's test in terms of the code of ethics. Forget the code of ethics, it just wouldn't stand anyone's test. So what's changed? Well, I think society's changed, and I think our understanding of the effects of language, which is hidden under a veil of banter, has changed as well. Because you'll often hear that in the police. Oh, it's just banter. It's just harmless banter. Well, harmless banter can influence people and can upset people to the point where they may actually feel as though the only way out is to leave the police. It can cause mental health issues, and it can cause people not to look forward to going to work. And so on my online course, we talk a lot about organisational justice and procedural justice, and how that has a link with legitimacy on many levels. So this is where it all starts. It starts with the behaviour of officers and police staff, both within the police station and without. So to help gauge this and to help explain it, we use my sort of 1 to Tenometer. Those of you who are my clients know that I use this often as a way of gauging where we are or the levels of something. And it's useful, I think, to think about this sort of level of inappropriateness. So if we've got over here, number 1, that it really is just something that's okay to joke about. It may be inappropriate, but you could watch television on Saturday night and find people making jokes about this kind of stuff. And 10 is absolutely inappropriate. So we looked at the comments and we sort of battered it around a little bit, the sort of comments from Love They Neighbour, and decided that they were up there as a 10. No doubt about it. Whereas back in the 70s, they would have been a sort of a 1 or maybe even a 0. People would have questioned why you're even questioning, why are you even discussing this? It's not even banter, this is funny, it's humour. Haven't you got a sense of humour? Where's your sense of humour? So that's what you would have got if you tried to challenge this kind of behaviour back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. I know that because I was there. I had a very hard time sometimes being a police officer, trying to challenge and navigate some of the language and behaviour that existed back then. So we came up with, I came up with a conundrum, which I'm going to leave you with now, because there's plenty of detail on the client-only Facebook group as to how to confront this kind of comment. But what I want you to start thinking about is how this links with the code of ethics, and the sort of conundrums that this would present you with if you heard this kind of comment in the police station. So here's the challenge I'm going to give you. Please feel free to put your comments below, whether you agree or disagree, or whether you think this should be challenged at all. Let me know. Put the comments in the little comments box below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook. So here's the challenge. You're in the police, you've been in the police now for about a year, you're really enjoying it, you love the camaraderie. I used to call it the Kebab camaraderie, and indeed that's what you're all sharing one Sunday evening. It's the last one of nights. The sergeant's okayed it for someone to go down to the best kebab shop in the area and get the team kebabs in. And they brought them to the police station, and it's about 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. The Q word, it's that Q word thing, and it seems to have simmered down a little bit. It could all kick off at any moment, but at the moment it's simmered down, and you're all round the table in the night kitchen tucking into your kebabs. And then one of your colleagues comes in to join you, and she's never actually taken to having kebabs. She doesn't really talk about it too much, but she's actually vegan, and she opens up her little box of yummies that she's going to tuck into, and it's various pulses and beans and all sorts of other good stuff that's probably extremely healthy for you. The sergeant, who's been in the job for a long time, good 25 years, looks at her, laughs and says, "You're not eating that rabbit food, are you? That's not going to do you any good. Tell you what you do need. You need a little bit of meat inside you." So there you go, folks. There's the comment. Rabbit food just looks like rabbit food. I tell you what you really need. You need a little bit of meat inside you. Now, a lot of your colleagues start laughing. It sort of boosts the sergeant's position as a sort of humour maker, and it's bringing the team together. But what would you do? I mean, seriously, what would you do? Would you do nothing? Would you challenge the sergeant? Would you report it upwards without telling the sergeant? Would you tell the person who had the fun made out of them, or the banter, who was at the receiving end of the banter, that you'd be prepared to support them if they wanted to make a complaint? Or there's all sorts of other options as well. You're going to have to work all of this stuff out, folks, because this is about someone's beliefs. And we don't know why this person is vegan. They might be vegan just because of their beliefs. They might be vegan because of a medical condition. They could be vegan because it's cultural or religious, or it could be a blend of all of the above, or other reasons. But if it is their firm belief that they want to follow a vegan lifestyle, then who are we to question it? Who are we to make fun of it? Is it acceptable to create banter, in inverted commas, out of someone's beliefs? Take a look at the protected characteristics. Do they include beliefs? Have a really good think about this one, because when we discussed it, I mean, the person I was coaching had been a special constable. What it came back with was, my guess is that you could hear this sort of comment right across the country, and no one would challenge it. And we've got that comment there, haven't we, about what you really need is a bit of meat inside you. Well, what does that mean? Does it mean a little bit of kebab, or does it mean something a little bit more sinister? Is that sergeant making a joke about that woman's sexuality? Is it a vile and vulgar joke, or is it just, well, I don't know what she's getting upset about. What I meant was she needs to join us and have a kebab. Well, it's clearly your dirty mind there, Inspector, challenging me about that. I'm sorry, but I've not got your sort of smutty mind. That's just what you read into my comments. I meant nothing of the sort. I meant, come and join us for a kebab one night. I'll leave it with you, folks. So for those of you who've watched my video on how you would approach this using CUDSA, please do let me know how you'd get on. And here's the thing, folks. So the people who'd be interviewing you, they may, if they give you a sort of open question that someone says something inappropriate, how would you deal with it? I'd bring up something like this, because they may be sat there thinking, rabbit food, how's that insulting? That's just a bit of banter. Now, we placed it on a level of inappropriateness as about a 3. What number does something become banter or stop becoming banter? So we worked out that when things are a 1 to 4, they get excused as banter. 5 to 10, everyone knows it's inappropriate, and there's degrees of that inappropriateness. So some things like the stuff from Love They Neighbour, definitely inappropriate. Anyway, let me know what you think, folks. It's certainly an area full of conundrums, but if you're answering that question and you can bring in all of these conundrums, even some of them that you might not have answers for, I can tell you one thing, I can guarantee you one thing, you're going to have the interviewers looking at you thinking, this is a sort of future we need for the police service. Because you're going to rewrite the story, well, not rewrite it, you're going to write the story of where the police service goes in terms of degrees of acceptability. So I could go into this one in far more depth. I'm sure I could probably create a 2-hour lecture out of this one, but I'm not going to. I'm going to end here. I'm going to wish you well, and I'll catch up with you very soon. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye for now.